Get out of my office, now! The voice was sharp, cold, and commanding. The kind of voice that silenced rooms. A voice that was used to being obeyed without hesitation. It belonged to Gregory Harrison, the CEO of a prestigious multinational company in downtown Manhattan. His words cut through the air like a knife, and they were directed at a man who had not expected to be humiliated in front of strangers. Isaiah Cole, a black janitor whose quiet diligence had made him almost invisible in the corporate corridors. But this time Isaiah wasn't invisible. Not at all. It had started innocently. Isaiah had entered the CEO's corner office late in the evening, carrying his cart with the usual supplies: a mop, a bucket, a spray bottle of glass cleaner, and a small rag. He was there to do what he had done countless nights before: wipe the glass table, polish the floor, and take out the trash. But on this night the room wasn't empty. Gregory Harrison was there with members of the board, discussing strategies for an upcoming merger. It was a room filled with million-dollar suits, perfectly shined shoes, and power that pulsed like electricity. Isaiah had paused, waiting respectfully for permission to continue. He wasn't trying to intrude, he was just doing his job. He had a family to feed, bills to pay, and every minute of overtime counted. But Harrison didn't see him as a man trying to earn an honest living. He saw him as an interruption, an inconvenience. "Didn't you hear me?" Harrison's voice thundered again. "I said leave. This is not your place." The board members fell silent. Their eyes darted between the CEO and the janitor, unsure if they should intervene, unsure if they even had the right. After all, Gregory Harrison was known for his ruthless leadership. He was the type of man who cut deals without flinching, who saw people as assets or liabilities, nothing more. Isaiah froze. For a moment, shame washed over him, hot and heavy. He felt the sting of humiliation rise in his chest. He could have just turned around and walked away. He could have swallowed his pride and disappeared down the hall like a shadow. That would have been easier. But something inside him refused to move. He thought of his mother's words, spoken decades earlier when she worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. "Never let anyone make you feel less than who you are, Isaiah. Your worth is not measured by the clothes you wear, the car you drive, or the title you hold. Your worth is in the dignity you carry." And with that memory, Isaiah lifted his chin. "Sir," he said quietly but firmly, "I am not here to disturb your meeting. I am here to do my job, the same job I've done for this building for 15 years. With respect, I ask you not to speak to me as though I am dirt beneath your shoes." The room shifted. A gasp slipped from one of the board members. Another coughed uncomfortably. They weren't used to seeing anyone, let alone a janitor, speak back to Gregory Harrison. Harrison's face reddened. His jaw clenched. "How dare you speak to me like that?" he snapped. "You are a cleaner. Nothing more. You have no right to stand here in the middle of a meeting of executives. Take your cart and leave, or I'll make sure you never work in this city again." The threat was real. Harrison had connections. His word carried weight. He could end careers with a single phone call. But Isaiah didn't flinch. His voice grew stronger. "You can take away my job, Mr. Harrison. You can try to strip me of a paycheck, but you cannot take away my dignity. You cannot erase the fact that I work hard, that I provide for my family, and that I stand on the same ground as any man in this room. Cleaner or CEO, we all breathe the same air." The silence that followed was deafening. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. Some lowered their eyes in shame. Others looked directly at Isaiah with something that resembled admiration. One of them, a woman in a navy blue suit, shifted in her chair as though she was restraining herself from applauding. But Harrison only grew angrier. "Security will escort you out," he barked. Yet before he could press the intercom button on his desk, the chairman of the board, an older man with silver hair and a measured voice, cleared his throat. "Gregory," he said slowly, "perhaps it is you who should leave the room for a moment." All eyes turned to him. The chairman leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on Harrison. "I heard every word, and so did everyone else here. What you just said was not only disrespectful, it was disgraceful. This company was built on principles of fairness and respect, and you as its leader have just undermined that in front of witnesses." Harrison stiffened. His mouth opened as though to protest, but the chairman raised a hand to silence him. "Enough. We will not allow this company's reputation to be tarnished because its CEO cannot treat people with basic human decency." Please step outside while we discuss this further. For the first time in years, Gregory Harrison looked powerless. His authority crumbled under the weight of the board's disapproval. His lips tightened, his nostrils flared, and he stormed out of the room, slamming the glass door so hard that it rattled in its frame. Isaiah stood still, his hands gripping the handle of his mop cart. His heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't show it. He had spoken his truth, and for the first time in a long time, he felt taller than any skyscraper outside the window. Then slowly, the chairman turned his gaze toward him. "Mr. Cole," he said respectfully, "would you mind staying a little longer? We would like to hear from you." And as he nodded, still holding onto his dignity like armor, the board members leaned in, not to dismiss him, but to listen. The room felt different now. The CEO's thunderous presence was gone, leaving behind a silence that was heavy, almost sacred. The board members were no longer leaning toward Gregory Harrison's power. Instead, their attention rested squarely on Isaiah Cole, the man who just moments earlier had been dismissed as nothing more than a cleaner. Isaiah shifted uncomfortably. His work uniform, slightly faded at the seams, felt out of place in a room full of tailored suits and silk ties. He was a man of humble means standing in the heart of wealth and authority. Yet somehow he didn't feel small. Not anymore. The chairman adjusted his glasses and spoke in a calm, deliberate tone. "Mr. Cole, forgive the intrusion into your work this evening, but I believe we all just witnessed something important, something worth pausing for. You see, leadership is not only about numbers, profits, or mergers. It is about people. And what we heard from you was the voice of dignity." A murmur of agreement rippled through the boardroom. Isaiah hesitated, then cleared his throat. "Sir, I didn't come here to give speeches. I came here to mop the floors and empty the trash. But when a man tries to strip me of my humanity, I can't stay silent. I've seen it before, too many times. People look at me, see the color of my skin, and decide my place in the world before I even open my mouth." His words hung in the air. One of the younger board members shifted in his chair, his face somber. "He's right," the man said softly. "We sit here making decisions that affect thousands of employees. Yet we forget about the very people who keep this building standing day after day." Isaiah looked down for a moment, then raised his eyes. "I don't ask for special treatment. I don't ask for riches or applause. All I ask for is respect, to be seen, to be acknowledged as a man who works hard, provides for his family, and deserves the same dignity as anyone else." The woman in the navy blue suit leaned forward. Her eyes glistened with empathy. "Mr. Cole, do you know what struck me most about what you said? You didn't respond with anger. You responded with truth. That takes courage." Isaiah's chest tightened. For years he had carried the weight of unspoken words, swallowing insults, pretending not to hear the whispers when he passed in the hallway. Tonight was different. Tonight his voice had cut through the noise. The chairman leaned his elbows on the polished oak table. "You've been with this company 15 years, is that correct?" "Yes, sir," Isaiah replied. "Since I was 23. I've worked nights, weekends, whatever it took." "Tell me something," the chairman continued. "Have you ever been asked your opinion on anything regarding this company?" Isaiah let out a small, humorless laugh. "No, sir. Men like me don't get asked for opinions. We get asked to clean up after meetings, not sit in them." The honesty in his tone struck the room like a bell. For the first time in a long while, the board members were forced to confront something they had ignored: the silent walls between power and labor, between privilege and perseverance. The younger board member spoke again. "Maybe it's time that changed." A murmur of approval followed. But one man at the far end of the table, his tie a sharp crimson, leaned back with skepticism. "With all due respect, this is highly irregular," he said. "We can't let emotions interfere with corporate governance. Mr. Harrison is our CEO. We cannot undermine his authority because of one heated exchange." The chairman's gaze hardened. "This is not about undermining authority. This is about recognizing when authority has been abused." Did you not hear what he said? He reduced a man's worth to the title on his shirt. If our leader cannot uphold the dignity of every individual in this company, then perhaps we need to reconsider what kind of leadership we want to stand behind. Isaiah felt the weight of the room shift again. It was surreal, standing in a place he was never meant to stand, hearing words he never expected to hear. He wasn't sure if he belonged here, but for once he wasn't being told to leave. He decided to speak not for himself, but for every unseen worker whose sweat kept the lights on. "I know I don't sit on this board," he said carefully. And I know my voice doesn't carry the same weight as yours. But I'll tell you this. When leaders look down on those beneath them, it poisons the whole company. People notice. Even if they don't speak it aloud, they feel it. And when they feel disrespected, it kills the spirit that keeps a place alive. A man can only mop so many floors with pride if he's treated like the dirt he's cleaning. The boardroom went silent again. But this silence was different. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was reflective. The woman in navy blue turned to the chairman. I believe Mr. Cole deserves more than just an apology. His words tonight carry a truth that should not be forgotten the moment we leave this room. The chairman nodded slowly. I agree. Perhaps it's time this board does something unprecedented. Perhaps it's time we invite voices like Mr. Cole's into conversations about culture, about respect, about the foundation of who we are as a company. The skeptical man scoffed. What are you suggesting? That we make him an executive? The chairman shook his head. No. I'm suggesting we recognize that leadership is not confined to titles. Leadership is the courage to speak truth when silence is easier. And tonight that leadership came not from our CEO, but from a man who pushes a mop. Isaiah's throat tightened. He had never thought of himself as a leader. He was a worker, plain and simple. But as he looked around the room, he saw something he had longed for his entire life. Respect. The chairman straightened in his chair. Mr. Cole, if you are willing, I would like you to join us for the remainder of this discussion. Not as a janitor, not as a cleaner, but as a man who reminded us all what dignity truly means. Isaiah swallowed hard. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say yes, the woman in navy urged with a small smile. And so Isaiah nodded. Yes, I'll stay. The board members leaned in, this time not to hear numbers or projections, but to hear something more profound. They wanted to hear the voice of a man who had stood tall when it would have been easier to bow his head. And outside the glass door, in the corridor where Gregory Harrison paced like a storm cloud, the sound of Isaiah's words carried. Words that would not only change the course of one man's career, but shake the very foundation of power within those walls. Gregory Harrison paced the hallway like a caged lion. His polished shoes clicked sharply against the marble floor, each step echoing his frustration. He had never been told to leave his own boardroom before. Never in his 20 years as CEO had anyone dared to challenge him so openly, and certainly not a janitor. To him it felt like an insult, a personal betrayal. But inside the boardroom the atmosphere was changing. Isaiah Cole, still standing near his cleaning cart, had been invited to sit. At first he refused, saying quietly, "This chair isn't meant for me." Yet the chairman insisted, "Tonight it is." Isaiah lowered himself into the chair cautiously, like a man stepping into deep waters. He wasn't sure if he would sink or float, but something in his heart told him this was no accident. Life had prepared him for this moment in ways he hadn't realized. Every long night of scrubbing floors, every ignored greeting in the hallway, every whisper of prejudice that told him he didn't belong, each one had been a lesson in resilience. The chairman spoke again. Ladies and gentlemen, let us remember why we sit at this table. It isn't only to count profits or outmaneuver competitors. It is to ensure this company stands for something greater than numbers, respect, fairness, humanity. If we lose that, we lose everything. He turned to Isaiah. Mr. Cole, what would you have us remember, if nothing else, from what happened tonight? Isaiah exhaled slowly. He looked around the room, meeting each pair of eyes. Remember that the people you don't notice are still the ones keeping this place alive. The man who changes the light bulbs, the woman who cleans the bathrooms, the security guard who stays awake at night when you're sleeping. Without them, these walls would crumble. We may not wear suits, but we carry weight. And when leaders treat us with contempt, it echoes far beyond these doors. The room was utterly still. Not a cough, not a shuffle of papers, not even the faint buzz of a phone could break the silence. Isaiah's words had landed. They weren't polished like a corporate speech. They were raw, real, undeniable. The woman in navy blue leaned forward. Mr. Cole, would you allow us to share your words with the rest of the company? Not as a statement drafted by lawyers, but as truth from a man who deserves to be heard. Isaiah blinked, his throat tight. If it can change something, if it can make the next cleaner, the next worker, feel seen, then yes, share it. The chairman nodded solemnly. So it shall be. Meanwhile, in the hallway, Gregory's anger turned to dread. He could see the shadows of his board members through the frosted glass, leaning toward Isaiah as though he were the one holding authority now. Gregory's empire, built on dominance and fear, was slipping from his grasp, not through hostile takeovers or financial ruin, but through the quiet courage of a man he had dismissed. At last the door opened. The chairman stepped out. Gregory straightened, forcing composure. "Well?" he demanded. The chairman's eyes were steady, unwavering. "The board has reached a decision. Your behavior tonight was unacceptable, Gregory. We cannot overlook it, nor can we risk the reputation of this company under leadership that disrespects its own people." Gregory's jaw tightened. "You can't be serious. Over a janitor?" The chairman's voice was cold steel. "Over a man you failed to see. Effective immediately, you are suspended pending review. The company will not tolerate arrogance disguised as leadership." Gregory's face drained of color. For the first time in years, he had no words. He turned sharply, storming down the hall, his empire crumbling behind him. Back in the boardroom, Isaiah remained seated, though uneasily. When the chairman returned, he placed a hand on Isaiah's shoulder. "Mr. Cole, tonight you taught us all something we had forgotten. For that we owe you more than gratitude. We owe you change." Isaiah shook his head gently. "I didn't come here to change a company. I came here to do my job." The chairman smiled faintly. "Sometimes, Mr. Cole, the most powerful change comes from those who never sought it. You reminded us of our humanity. That will echo far beyond these walls." Over the following weeks, the company issued a public statement, not drafted by attorneys or polished by PR professionals, but built directly from Isaiah's words. His story spread through the workforce like wildfire. Workers from every department, janitors, clerks, receptionists, cafeteria staff felt a spark of pride, a reminder that they mattered. For the first time in years, employees walked through the doors with their heads held a little higher. Isaiah himself remained humble. He still pushed his cart, still mopped the same floors. But something was different. When executives passed him now, they greeted him with respect. Not pity, not politeness, respect. And when his children asked him about the night, he stood up to the CEO. Isaiah told them, "I didn't fight for me. I fought so you'll know never to let anyone tell you you're less than what you are." As for Gregory Harrison, his suspension soon became permanent. The board concluded that arrogance without empathy was not leadership at all. His name faded from the company's walls, a reminder that even the most powerful can fall when they forget the value of human dignity. But Isaiah's name? It remained, not on a plaque, not on a wall of fame, but in the hearts of those who worked alongside him. For in one defining moment, when it would have been easier to bow his head and walk away, he had stood tall, and in standing tall he had lifted countless others with him. In the end, Isaiah realized something profound. True power doesn't come from titles or wealth. It comes from the courage to speak truth even when your voice shakes. It comes from knowing that dignity is not granted by others. It is carried within you, unshakable and unbreakable. And so the story of a black cleaner who refused to be silenced became a lesson that echoed across boardrooms, hallways, and cafeterias, not just in that company, but in every place where people were reminded that respect is not a privilege, it is a right. Isaiah went back to work the next evening, mop in hand, cart at his side. But as he moved down the gleaming halls, he knew the floors beneath him weren't the only things that had been cleaned. Something far greater had been restored. The dignity of every unseen worker who deserved to be seen, respected and valued.